Hello class, we're looking at our informal geometry notes 5.1. So what we have in this diagram is we have marking showing that angle D is congruent to this one. See, these two have the same angle marks. We have then these two angles are congruent. This has two kind of curves on it, and so does this angle over here. These match with 3, and our sides are congruent also. This one has 1 tick mark, this one has 2, this one has 3. So this means our triangles are congruent because all of the corresponding parts are the same size. So we're going to go through and we're going to list the corresponding angles and then the corresponding sides. So our corresponding angles would be like A and D that both have the one arc on them. So I'm going to write that angle A is congruent to angle D. And we've got C and F congruent. They each have 2 of those arcs. So angle C is congruent to angle F. And the last one would be that angle B is congruent to angle E. So congruent is when we make this equal sign with the squiggly line on top. That means congruent. And notice I'm writing angle here. I'm not writing the measure of the angle. So when we talk about angles themselves, we say congruent. If we're talking about the measures, we would just say equal. We also have corresponding sides. So we say corresponding angles because these are congruent. Our corresponding sides would be like AB here that has the 1 tick mark would be congruent with DE that also has tick mark, 1 tick mark. So AB, and remember we've got that segment symbol on top because it is a line segment, is congruent to DE. We've got the sides that have the 2 tick marks. So we have BC and we have EF. So BC is congruent to EF. And then the last one would be the one with 3 tick marks. We have AC and DF. And don't forget your line segment symbols. Okay, so this is basically what we're getting at today. What can be tricky about these diagrams is that they can turn one of them. And so then it's more difficult to figure out how things match up. So that's going to be the challenge. Without a diagram, what are the corresponding and also congruent angles for the following triangle? So when they write them in order, like this, triangle pet is congruent to triangle dog, it means that your P and D are going to be your corresponding angles and therefore congruent. We're going to have E and O, and then we're going to have T and G. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that down. Angle P is congruent to angle D. We have angle E congruent to angle O, and we have angle T congruent to angle G. So we list them in exactly the order that they are corresponding. Finish each congruent statement for the 2 examples. Make sure you get the corresponding order. So the order really, really matters on this. So here we're talking about KJL. So I always use something, pen, something bright that I can trace it with. So K is here, and then J, and then L. And what I'm looking at is I start off with the angle that has 1 tick mark. Then this side has 2. Then this angle has 2. And then this side has 1. And I need the other one to go in exactly the same order. So I want to find my angle that has 1 tick mark. And then I want to go along the side that has 2, right? And then my angle S is going to be the same as J. And then I would go down here to angle R and finish off with the angle that has those 3 tick marks. So those 2 are going to correspond. Okay, so let's go ahead and check our order again. We had KJL, so we went this way, and on this one, I need to go this way. So I'm going to have to say triangle TSR. So it's almost like I'm thinking about an angle, but we're really talking about triangles being congruent. The angles are also congruent, but we're talking about those triangles being congruent. And again, we have to list those angles and sides for both of them in exactly the same order. So let's try on this one. Triangle YXZ. So Y is here, and then X, and then Z. So I'm starting off on this angle that has 3, and then the side that has 1. All right, so I'm going this way here. Let's see if I can match that on the other one. So the angle that has 3, that would be here. And then the side that has 1. And then it looks like my angle that has 1. All right, so we're going to be going like this, aren't we? So I start out with 3 tick marks and then 1, go over here to this angle, and then along this side. So this is the direction I would go in for that first one that they give me. And then the one that I'm writing, I go from W to Z to X. So W, Z, X. So be really careful about getting the order on those the same. Let's go ahead and flip and look at the back. So in the diagram, we know that the 2 triangles are congruent. So now we want to go through and kind of match them. So if we have P and then Q and then R. So that means P and X are both congruent. Q and Y are both going to be congruent, and R and Z. And if they're congruent, remember, it means that their angle measures are the same. So Y is going to match up with angle Q. So measure of angle Q would be the same as Y. That's going to be 95 degrees. And then looking at this, if we think about this order again, they say P, then Q, then R. And the other one is X, then Y, then Z. So when this one is 10 over here, it's going to be the same as ZX, which is also going to be 10. So be really careful. Remember, our corresponding angles and sides are congruent, which means lengths are equal, which means angles are equal. Which a congruent statement is true for the following triangles? So let's go ahead and check these out. So it looks like these ones are oriented exactly the same way, which is going to make our lives a little bit easier. So the first one says JKL and MNP. So let's look at this, JKL, but then on the other one, they start up at M and then N and then P. So we wouldn't want to say it that way. Remember, if we're going to say JKL, the other one needs to be in exactly the same order. So if I make like this little shape on one, I should be doing it on the other one. So not the first one. The second one is the second one, right? NMP. So NMP. That is exactly the same as our first one, same kind of order. So those are good. So we have to list the corresponding angles in order for those triangles to be congruent. We need to show it that way. In the following diagram, is it possible to show that the corresponding angles are congruent? So first we have KJL. So let's look at this one. KJL is going to be this angle right here. And is it congruent to HJG? HJG. So looking at those two, we could talk about, let's see, we have 2 congruent sides, or 2 congruent, sides, but that doesn't really matter, or lines. These are vertical angles. So because they are vertical angles, they are automatically congruent. All right, so L and G, and maybe we should mark the parallel sides on here. So LK, it looks like it is marked congruent. I just want to kind of see it. This one's, not congruent, parallel. Those 2 are parallel. So now we're looking at L and G. So if I think about angle L and angle G, this is that transversal that is cutting through those 2 parallel sides. And so when I'm talking about this angle here with this angle over here, I am looking at, they're on different sides of the transversal, so alternating, but they're inside of the parallel line, so alternating interior angles. And remember when we traced them before, when you traced them, you could make that Z shape. So that was the other way we could figure that out. And then how about K and H? So K and H, it looks like the same thing. We still have parallel lines. This time it's a different transversal, so alternating interior as well. So I could mark those equal. So let's see, I have 1 arc on these, 2 over here. I'll put 3 on this one. 1, 2, 3. Where is that at? 1, 2, 3. So that means I have 3 equal angles and 3 equal sides. So are all the corresponding parts congruent? Yes, so that means the triangles are congruent. And if I wanted to write that out, I could write triangle. Let's start over here at L. Let's say LKJ is congruent to. So if I'm going to say LKJ, so I have 2 arcs, 3 arcs, 1 arc. So 2 arcs, 3 arcs, 1 arc would be triangle GHJ. So when I am looking at how they're corresponding, I am matching up all those sides and all those angles. All right, last one. This is a little bit tricky today. You guys do really well when it's algebra. It's a lot trickier when it's the geometry stuff. So now we have opposite sides on this shape are parallel. So it must be a parallelogram. It says angle BAC is congruent to angle DCA. So BAC is going to be this one here. And then DCA is this one over here. So this is that same thing. We have a transversal here that's cutting through 2 parallel lines. So these are alternating interior angles again. DAC and BCA. DAC, let's see, DAC. That's going to be here. And the second one's BCA. BCA. That's going to be right here. And again, those are going to be the same kind of thing, right? We have a different 2 parallel. Here's a parallel here. Here's a parallel here. We've got another transversal. So those are going to be alternating interior angles again. So is the third angle equal? Well, it has to be, right? We know that triangles, the interior angles add up to 180. So if 2 of them are same, the other one must be the same also. So I'm going to write yes, and then I'm going to try and put 3 arcs on this one. The last diagram got pretty messy. We'll try and make this one neater. Are all the corresponding parts congruent? Yes. And so I have 2 congruent triangles. So this time I'm going to start where I have 3 arcs and then 2 arcs and then 1 arc. So I'm going to say triangle DAC. Remember, we just have to list them in the same order. It doesn't matter. So if I did 3, 2, and then 1, then I would do 3, 2, and then 1. So I would have BCA. So really work to get those angles in the same order. It's a little bit tricky today. This is definitely not our strength, right? When we're looking at sides and angles and we're having to use that correct notation. So make sure you ask for help if you need it.